Pinehurst Road, one of those all-American sounding street names that you find in towns all around the country, inspired by trees, Maple Drive, Oak Road, Elm Street. And like Elm Street, Pinehurst has had its share of murderous nightmares. In fact, Freddy Krueger himself, actor Robert Englund, once called this street home. But it all begins in Pinehurst's very first house, once lived in by one of Hollywood's first female screenwriters, a woman whose first story was called Wanted for Murder. Little did she know what would happen in her house 80 years later. Pinehurst Park, situated between Pinehurst and Hillcrest Roads, 1 block north of Franklin Avenue. And if you were around here in the 1990s, you saw a couple of dilapidated bungalows sitting here, occupied by squatters and people cracked out of their minds. The homes, they sat vacant for years, one of them eventually going up in flames before the neighbors stepped in the early 2000s saying enough is enough. Well, they were able to get the houses demolished, and over time, the land became acquired by Hollywood Heights and now serves as a private park for its residents and their dogs. But the crack houses that sat here, they were once beautiful craftsman bungalows built in the early 1900s, and they looked very similar to the two across the street, one of which is miraculously still standing today. And despite the opposing other two being crack dens for years, I am still going to make a bet that this house is the one that has seen the worst possible scene played out. The bungalows across from Pinehurst Park were built for Mr. Alvin Bacon Carpenter, and he actually died in the one which stood on the corner there where that parking lot now sits. And I don't have the exact date when it was turned into a parking lot, but Mr. Carpenter died there in 1960, so it survived up until at least then. This one he used as a rental property right from the start. 1911 Pinehurst, a 3-bedroom, 1,700 square foot house built in 1912. Around that time, a young writer's career was just getting started. Agnes Christine Johnston from Swissvale, Pennsylvania, had sold her very first story to a production company when she was just 16 years old. It was called Wanted for Murder, back in 1902. Never got made into a film, but after going to school, including Harvard, where she studied playwriting, she found herself out here in Hollywood, where she would become one of the first people to live in this house. She had written a few short films beginning in 1915, but her career took off when she was hired to write specifically for Mary Pickford in 1919. Her work with Mary was very successful, and that led her to be hired by Thomas Ince, the producer who died on William Randolph Hearst's yacht, the one we talked about on Camrose Drive. Well, she signed a contract with him, but that only lasted up until his mysterious death in 1924. But by that time, Agnes was such a sought-after writer that she began earning $1,000 a week, just over $18,000 in today's world. She eventually signed a contract at MGM, where she teamed up with Hearst's mistress, actress Marion Davies, co-writing some of her best work, like 1928's The Patsy, which was directed by King Vidor, who we talked about a while back on this tour. Agnes, Marion, and King would also team up that same year for the film Show People. Agnes's career lasted over 25 years, including the transition from silent pictures to sound, an accomplishment that not many people in Hollywood were able to pull off. She more than succeeded, though. She worked on over 80 films throughout the 20s, 30s, and 40s. I think maybe her most remembered film is 1946's Black Beauty. She also segued from film to television in the 1950s before her Hollywood career came to an end in 1954. During her 35-year career, Agnes married a fellow screenwriter, and they had 3 children. It was a big deal, too. I mean, how could a woman work and raise a family? The 1920s wanted to know. She wasn't your typical woman. In fact, she was pretty vocal about it. She was very social and loved to travel, once telling the LA Times, "I think women have too much creative energy to spend it merely on housekeeping." Agnes and her husband, they wound up moving to Guadalajara, Mexico, where she wrote children's books from 1956 to 1968. They eventually moved to San Diego, where Agnes passed away in the summer of 1978 at the age of 82. A rental property from the very beginning. It would be hard to track down everyone who's ever called this place home since its completion 113 years ago, but several of the tenants I did find were a lot like the residents we've learned about on this tour. Fun people who love to entertain and be social. They hosted luncheons here, dinners, parties, club meetings, lovely social gatherings. I mean, who could forget Mrs. Bennett, who lived here after Agnes Johnston in 1921? Oh, she made a delicious grapefruit marmalade, and she shared her recipe for it with the world. It was delicious. She invited me over to try it one afternoon. A bit sweet, what with the pound of sugar the recipe called for, but oh, she was a delight. We always had a blast, and she's lucky she got in this place when she did, because 6 years later, in 1927, this house was going for a whopping $90 a month. Can you imagine $90 a month to rent a 3-bedroom home? The nerve. Well, Miss Jean Melville, she could afford it. She lived here as the roaring 1920s closed out, and oh, what fun she must have had. According to the press, she was a very popular young lady in the social circles of Hollywood. She was constantly written about, whether it was for attending soirees all over town or for hosting them herself. She would have parties here in this house, attended by upwards of 50 people. She was very loved, often appearing in the newspaper alongside her close-knit family members and friends. She was very well-traveled, well-spoken, and seemed to have a zest for the fun adventures that life has to offer. She actually sounds a lot like Ashley Ellerin, a young lady who would lead a very similar lifestyle to Jean's when she arrived here in 2001. Unlike Jean, though, Ashley would never get the chance to move out. In the late afternoon of Wednesday, February 21st, 2001, 22-year-old Ashley Ellerin returned to her home here after dropping her father off at LAX. He had flown down from Northern California to visit his daughter and to help with some home renovation projects that were going on here at the house. And any sadness she may have felt to see her dad go was probably sidelined by an invitation she had received upon coming home. She was all set to go on her first official date with a budding new film and television star, 23-year-old Ashton Kutcher. He had called her from the set of That 70s Show to invite her to a Grammy after award party at a club on the Sunset Strip following the telecast that night. Well, the two, they had only hung out a couple of times, once when they first met at a party, and then here at this house when a mutual friend brought Ashton to the housewarming party that Ashley threw after moving in at the end of 2000, just a few months prior. This, however, was going to be a date and a Grammy party at that. Now, just to set the era here, I kind of feel inclined to remind you that in February of 2001, the nominees for Song of the Year at those Grammys were Bye Bye Bye, thanks to NSYNC, I Try by Macy Gray, Say My Name from Destiny's Child, and my personal favorite in that category, Music by Madonna. And the winner was U2 with Beautiful Day. 9/11 hadn't happened yet. The vibe, it was just so different. The Hollywood nightclub scene, oh, it was on fire. I moved here in 1995 to an apartment 1 block off of the Sunset Strip, and I remember that period very, very well. People swarming the sidewalks, just trying to get into some of these clubs. And you'd have to slam on your brakes for paparazzi trying to catch celebrities going in and out of the trendiest nightclub. And in 2001, Justin and Britney were at their peak. Sex and the City was about to win the Best Comedy at the Emmys. People, they like to go out and have a good time. Hollywood was alive, and Ashley Ellerin, she was a part of it all. Not only did she love Hollywood, but Hollywood loved her. She had dated Vin Diesel, who had not yet hit it big with the Fast and the Furious movies, as well as actor Jeremy Sisto. She, like Jean Melville of the 1920s, was very popular and very loved in the world of Hollywood. It didn't begin that way for her, though. She was born just over 6 hours north of Los Angeles in Los Altos, California on July 16, 1978. And after graduating from high school there, she moved to Hollywood in 1997 to attend UCLA's Fine Arts program before transferring to FITM, the Fashion Institute here in LA, where she wanted to embark on a career in design. And Ashley was extremely close to her family. She talked to her mom and dad all the time while balancing school, jobs, and the Hollywood nightlife. She was very important to them, as was her safety, so this house was very appealing to them. It looked a lot different 25 years ago. The house was yellow, and you could see it very well because the fence surrounding the property was made of iron bars that made it pretty easy to see through. And in addition to the fence, there were bars on the windows, making it all seem very secure. She would share the house with a couple of roommates, and they weren't just roommates. They were friends. They socialized and partied together, sometimes hosting parties with 40 to 50 friends here in this house. Really just young Hollywood kids having the time of their lives. This is, well, it's kind of a hard story to tell. I really don't mind standing outside of these houses talking about what happened a million years ago, but this one, even though it was almost 25 years ago, just feels so current, and I feel a little tacky being here, so we are just gonna kind of quickly zoom in close enough so you can get an idea where the front door is, right there, up on a raised porch, and you enter the house right into, well, where that big window is. And Ashton Kutcher was supposed to pick Ashley up at 8 o'clock that Wednesday night, but decided to watch the Grammys at apparently Christy Swanson's house, the original Buffy. He called Ashley to tell her that he was going to get her for the after party more like 10 or 10:30, and Ashley was fine with it. She basically said don't worry because she herself was just getting out of the shower and told Ashton to take his time. Well, at 10:15, roommate Jennifer DeSisto came home after, ironically, working the red carpet at the Grammys. She was in PR, but she had left her house key at her boyfriend's by accident. She was hoping that one of the roommates would be home and could let her in. And like I said, this was not the kind of house where, you'd maybe find an open back door or a window you could crawl through. So after a few loud knocks, Jennifer gave up and went to spend the night with her boyfriend. About a half hour later, at 10:45, almost 3 hours later than their originally planned date, Ashton Kutcher showed up for his date with Ashley. He, like Jennifer, knocked and knocked, but found no answer, even with Ashley's BMW parked out front here. Ashton said that he looked in the window, didn't see anybody, but that he noticed a stain on the carpet. He said he thought it was red wine. I'm guessing that he just wasn't too concerned about it. I don't know, maybe he thought that because they had a lot of people here regularly that it was common to have spilled wine on the carpet, because he wasn't too concerned. He gave up and went home. Ashton and Jennifer just knocking away with absolutely no idea what awaited on the other side. Luckily for Ashton, and unfortunately for poor Jennifer, she would have to be the one to see just exactly what that stain really was. The following morning, Thursday, February 22nd, Jennifer DeSisto returned to her home and she pulled up next to Ashley's BMW, which was parked out front here. This time, she had her key. Letting herself in, she noticed the pool of red that Ashton Kutcher had seen, but upon further inspection, she realized it was blood. Turning the corner, she saw Ashley's lifeless body, face up, in the doorway between her bathroom and the hallway. Ashley was in a robe, a tank top, and silk boxer shorts, all drenched in blood. Her face was blue and so obviously dead. Fearing whoever did this was still in the house, Jennifer ran to her car where she drove as far from the scene as possible while calling 911. LA detective Tom Small was the first to arrive on the scene, followed by a swarm of police. He noticed that all of Ashley's jewelry was still present, as were noticeable sums of cash. Along with no visible signs of any kind of forced entry, he ruled out robbery. Ashley's curling iron and blow dryer were out, indicating that she was in the process of getting ready for her night out. He noticed multiple stab wounds all over her body. When the official autopsy came back, it was reported that Ashley Ellerin had been stabbed over 47 times. Some of those wounds going all the way through her. The killer was very strong, and it appeared that he was left-handed. The wounds indicated that Ashley put up quite a fight. It was very clear to Detective Small that this was a crime of passion, and whoever did this was either let in or they had a key. Well, he started questioning everyone he could, and nobody knew of any enemies in Ashley's life. And as for boyfriends, well, she was pretty single, although Tom was told to look into the landlord of this house, an actor named Mark Durbin. Mark was very cooperative, though, from the beginning, telling Detective Small that, yeah, he had in fact been with Ashley the night of her murder and admitted that the two had been sexually intimate. He said that as he was getting ready to leave, Ashley was getting out of the shower to answer a phone call from Ashton Kutcher around 8:30. But before police could even get Ashton's contact info, Ashton called them. As I said, he ran in the same social circles that Ashley did, and word about her murder traveled very fast. He said to the police, "Look, I just want you to know I was at Ashley's house last night at 10:45, knocking on the doors and peeking in the windows. You're going to see my fingerprints all over the outside of that house." He also told them about the, quote, spilled wine that he thought he saw. Well, Ashton Kutcher and Mark Durbin were cleared as suspects, although Mark had a much tougher time shedding suspicion due to his sexual history with Ashley. And as Detective Small kept asking around, there was one man who kept popping up. A man who had come into Ashley's life just a few months prior. According to one of Ashley's friends, a guy named Chris, the two of them were out front of the house here one day changing a flat tire on his car. Chris told Detective Small that he saw a good-looking white man in his mid-20s emerge from Pinehurst Park and approach the two of them, offering to help with the tire. Well, even though they declined his offer, the man stuck around, striking up small talk. He apparently told them that he was an actor and that to pay the bills, he was working in the air conditioning and heating business. He gave Ashley his business card that simply referred to him as Mike. He said to call him if she or any of her roommates ever needed anything done around the house, as he was also a handyman. Chris said that it was extremely clear that this Mike fella was smitten by Ashley's beauty. So much so that Mike the Furnace Man, as she and the roommates were now calling him, began showing up here unannounced and uninvited. He would brag to them, saying that he was a professional boxer. He wasn't. Well, he boxed, but he was an amateur boxer. He also told them that he was about to become a millionaire from a car accident that happened just down the street. He tried to play it up like he was this big hot shot in hopes of perhaps winning Ashley over. Well, it didn't work. Roommate Justin Peterson told Detective Small that one night he came home around 2:30 in the morning and saw Mike the Furnace Guy sitting in his car outside of this house, just watching and staring at the house. The following day, Mike showed up and Justin confronted him, asking him why he was parked out front the night before. Apparently, Mike said to him, "Yeah, look, I can't go home. I'm wanted for a murder that I didn't commit, and the police are trying to find me." Justin also recalled that Mike lifted his pant leg at one point, revealing a large knife strapped to his ankle. Well, with that, he told Mike that he had to leave the house. But when asked why Justin or Ashley didn't call the police, he said that they just brushed it off as another one of Mike's bullshit stories, trying to make him look like, I don't know, some sort of hotshot. Someone also told Tom Small that they recalled coming to a party here one night and they saw Mike the Furnace Man just standing on the porch, looking inside the windows. Well, he apparently followed this friend into the party where he didn't really talk to anyone or socialize. Instead, he just stood in the corner watching Ashley. All of these, I don't know what you want to call them, red flags, seemed to become larger warning signs once Ashley was found murdered, and Detective Small knew that he had to find this Mike the Furnace Guy. Nobody seemed to know this Mike guy's last name, and the business card with his phone number on it was long gone. Detective Small, he started looking into all of the traffic reports from this area, as well as any lawsuits, going on that story that he was told about Mike's supposed upcoming $1 million settlement. Well, the only thing he found with anyone named Mike or Michael was a case involving a dog attack. And the owner of that dog was named Michael Gargiulo. The case, it also included a photocopy of this Gargiulo's driver's license, and when it was shown to Ashley's friends and roommates, they immediately identified him as Mike the Furnace Guy. Well, it turns out he lived right down the street from Ashley on Orchid Avenue up here. When Small went to question Michael, he found that his apartment was nearly cleared out. Mike and his car, they hadn't been seen in a few days, and his landlord, as well as the neighbors, had no idea where he went. And I don't want to go down there and give this guy any sort of apartment legacy, so let's just say it is down there on Orchid, south of Franklin, right behind the Dolby Theater. Now, it would take Detective Small several months to locate this Michael Gargiulo, and really, it was all because of one really major stroke of good luck. That stroke of good luck came in 2002 when Cook County detectives reached out to Tom Small regarding a murder that took place in Chicago back in 1993. A 19-year-old girl named Trisha Picascio was found stabbed to death on the back door steps of her family home in Glenview, a suburb of Chicago. Well, that case, it had gone unsolved for nearly 10 years before a new DNA technology was developed in 2002. So they were re-examining the case now and wanted DNA samples of all of their original suspects. At the top of that list was the childhood best friend of Trisha's brother. Detectives had found out that this suspect had left Chicago and was now living in Hollywood, hence why they were calling Detective Tom Small to see if this guy happened to be in the Hollywood crime database. His name was Michael Gargiulo. Small about fell out of his chair. He told them, yeah, not only do I know this guy, but we are looking for him too. Well, LA and Cook County teamed up to hunt down Michael. They still couldn't find him, but they were able to get a warrant to get into his apartment to obtain a DNA sample, which they did. And when the results came back, the detectives were absolutely thrilled to learn that the DNA found under Trisha's fingernails was a direct match to Michael Gargiulo. However, Cook County prosecutors were not thrilled. They said, yeah, but he was a friend of the brothers. He was always in the Picascio house. In fact, he had actually seen and hung out with Trisha the day before her murder, so his DNA, it could have gotten there any number of ways. We're not pressing charges. And with that, he was free to go. He left Hollywood, found a girlfriend, and became a father. He kept a low profile for a couple of years while the Picascio and the Ellerin family watched the time pass without any arrests in the murders of their children. Cut to 2005. A 32-year-old woman named Maria Bruno was found dead, stabbed over 17 times, and her body absolutely mutilated in her bed at her apartment in El Monte, a suburb about a half hour away from here. The killer apparently entered through an open window in the kitchen of her ground floor apartment. In the courtyard of her apartment complex, police found a blue cotton bootie, the kind that service workers cover their shoes with, and it had a drop of blood on it, Maria's. police were baffled. Well, cut to April 2008. Santa Monica. 26-year-old Michelle Murphy awakened in her bed to find a man repeatedly stabbing her over and over. He shockingly had gotten on the roof and climbed through her second-floor bedroom window. She fought back with all of her might, going absolutely ballistic on this maniac, causing him to cut himself on the arm. Well, she didn't just fight him off. She chased him out of her apartment and was able to pretty calmly call 911. She also told police that as she was chasing her attacker out of her apartment, he stopped, turned towards her, and suddenly said, "I'm so sorry." Well, when police arrived, they collected the trail of blood that led from Michelle's bed outside to the sidewalk, and they ran the samples through their database, and guess whose DNA it matched? Mike the Furnace Man. Police tracked him down, and turns out he lived about 4 buildings away from Michelle. And upon further detective work, police also learned that he had lived in El Monte in 2005. Guess where? In Maria Bruno's apartment building. And where did he live when Ashley Ellerin was murdered here? About a block and a half away. Well, even though new residents lived in his old El Monte unit, police got a search warrant, and in the attic of his old apartment, they found one matching blue cotton bootie. With all of this evidence, Michael Gargiulo was finally arrested on June 6, 2008, 3 years after Maria Bruno's death and 7 years since Ashley Ellerin's. He was charged with both of their murders and with the attempted murder of survivor Michelle Murphy. Those poor families having to not only endure tragic murders, but having to wait for justice to be served, the agony, the patience that must test you. Well, if you think waiting that long for your loved one's killer to get arrested is bad, how about waiting another 11 years for that killer to go to trial? Michael Gargiulo, he set a California record for spending the longest amount of time between incarceration and going to trial, those 11 years. And really, I could spend an hour telling you the reasons why it took so long, but in a nutshell, this man, he was extremely smart. He often bragged to his friends and co-workers, many of whom actually turned against and testified against him after his arrest. He bragged to them that in his spare time, he would study and master criminology, that he could get away with murder if he ever wanted to. He knew the law inside and out, so he was really able to delay his trial by firing and rehiring lawyers, one time even representing himself, and all sorts of other little details that would continuously delay proceedings. When a legal team took over, they decided that Gargiulo's defense would be, and wait for it, multiple personalities. Yeah, they even involved doctors and basically said that he would kill and murder as one of his personalities, and then the next minute would be himself and be like, "What did I do?" And their biggest example of this was Michelle Murphy's claim that as he was running out of her apartment, he stopped, turned around, and said that he was sorry. They said that was his personality, therefore he's unfit to stand trial. Thankfully, a judge finally disagreed. So in May of 2019, the trial of Michael Gargiulo began. There were several witnesses called to testify, including Ashton Kutcher. He took the stand and basically reiterated everything that he had told the police from the very beginning, right along with the spilled wine belief. The prosecution used him to set the time frame of murder because he was the last one to ever speak to Ashley on the phone. His phone records showed that he talked to her at 8:24. Meanwhile, a neighbor, a man walking his dog, offered up his story. He was walking his dog to the Pinehurst Park when he recalls hearing a woman scream twice from right around Ashley's house here at around 8:30. He said the screams, quote, unnerved him, so he turned around and went home. I'm sorry, but if I hear a woman screaming, I'm calling the police. End of story. Oh, and if we're friends and I see spilled wine through your window, I'm coming in. That's just what is going to happen. Anyway, based on all of this, the defense for Gargiulo was like, hey, thanks, Ashton, because now we can say Mark Durbin, the landlord who Ashley was secretly having a fling with, we can say he did it. Somehow, I guess it wasn't Michael's other personalities anymore. Now it's Mark Durbin. Well, Durbin testified. He said, no, I didn't kill her. I was wrapping up a sexual encounter with her, and while I was leaving, Ashton Kutcher did call to tell her that he would be late. I heard it myself, but I left right after they hung up, and I was gone by 8:30. Well, sounds like maybe Mike the Furnace guy didn't like what he saw or may have heard going on inside with Ashley and Mark. And prosecution argued that he went in, probably even let in by Ashley. I'm thinking more like he probably knocked. She saw that it was him, opened the door to say, hey, look, you gotta leave. I don't have time for this. And maybe he pushed the door in. That's my guess. Jennifer DeSisto, she also testified, and so did probably the most important witness, certainly the absolute bravest, Michelle Murphy, who survived the vicious, unthinkable attack on her. She didn't hold back in the courtroom either, and really, she was a hero. After 4 months of testimony, the jurors deliberated for about 3 days when on August 15th, 2019, they found Gargiulo guilty of the murder of Ashley Ellerin, guilty of the murder of Maria Bruno, and guilty of the attempted murder of Michelle Murphy. Sentencing, however, was difficult because the argument of his mental illness was still in play, and it created this argument whether or not he should get life in jail with no parole or the death sentence. Throw in that, and that the whole COVID pandemic was just starting, and you get another unbelievable 2-year delay. Finally, though, at a July 2021 hearing, 45-year-old Mike Gargiulo was sentenced to death. However, that's very unlikely to happen due to the death penalty moratorium in the state of California, which I'm fine with. I mean, let him rot. Now, as for Trisha Pacascio, her case, it belongs to the state of Illinois, and as of right now, Gargiulo was extradited to Chicago in September of 2024, and I believe he is still waiting to go on trial for her murder. I mean, who knows how long that will be delayed. And speaking of Cook County, they have apologized for not prosecuting him when his DNA was found under Trisha's fingernails. Had they, Maria Bruno would still be alive, and Michelle Murphy, well, she wouldn't have to endure any of that trauma. Just when you thought the story was over, when everyone thought the story was over, a new twist occurred. In September of 2023, actor Danny Masterson, Ashton Kutcher's creepy co-star on that 70s show, he was convicted of raping multiple women. Right before his sentencing, a handful of Hollywood people wrote letters in his defense, and the media, they got their hands on them. They were supposed to be private letters, but they were blasted all over the media and the internet. The two most widely reported on letters came from Ashton Kutcher and his wife Mila Kunis. The internet did not like this, and they received so much hate that they shut down their socials and even resigned from various boards and organizations. Honestly, they really haven't been seen that much since either. Well, one of the many people to call them out was actress Christine Bixler, who not only was on that 70s show, but was one of Danny Masterson's rape accusers. Well, she read the couple's letters defending Masterson, which had Ashton calling him a role model and mentor, and, well, she put out the most absolute cryptic message on Instagram. She said, "Dear Ashton, I know the secrets your role model keeps for you, ones that would end you. Did you forget I was there? You were on speakerphone that night you called Danny on February 21st, 2001. I heard everything. I heard the plan. In my opinion, you're just as sick as your mentor." I mean, why would someone lie about that? Well, you can imagine just how wild the internet went. You can find yourself going down rabbit holes all night with it. There are a lot of theories out there, but I think the main one, at least the one that I believe, is that, well, first of all, let me say, I don't think Ashton Kutcher had anything to do with Ashley's murder. Most people don't. But what is very possible, and what a lot of people think, is that he probably came here and walked in and found Ashley dead on the floor, freaking out and calling Danny Masterson for advice. I mean, Ashton was a rising star on a successful show. Dude, Where's My Car had recently come out. He was becoming big time and probably didn't want to be involved with this. They probably decided to just leave her and probably thought someone else would find her. That would make sense if that's what Christine Bixler was referring to regarding the phone call that she heard, because, well, it is sick to let someone else find her. The internet also thinks that maybe that's why Ashton wrote a letter for leniency with Danny's sentencing. I mean, there's really a ton of theories and beliefs out there, but I don't know for sure. The only thing that is certain is that 3 beautiful, young, vibrant women lost their lives at the hands of an absolute madman, and there's just not enough justice in the world to make any of their friends and family feel better. And, well, that does it for 1911 Pinehurst. Time to go explore the rest of this street, and surprisingly, Ashley Ellerin's isn't the only murder to have happened on Pinehurst.